TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Welcome to the continuing saga of the Rolling Stones and our thoughts and impressions and maybe some interesting bits of information, Carl, that people might not know about in regards to this great rock and roll band, bro.
Yeah. Hey, Charlie Watts is... When we think of drummers, we think of people that are loud, outspoken, almost life of the party. Charlie was the complete opposite. He was very reserved, humble, but incredibly musical. Probably the best word. Yeah.
Well, he was certainly no Tommy Lee or Keith Moon, was he?
Yeah. Yeah, I think were we talking about it last week where they had they showed 5 different band members and their percentage of nervousness before they go on stage, and on a Richter scale, 100% being the most nervous and 0 being the most, just loud and proud. So the guitar player was 90% all nervous, like Mick Taylor. The singer was 50%, sort of half, very anxious but excited all at the same time. Bass player was about 25%, sort of sitting down and just sort of noodling and could take it or leave it. And the drummer was -10, like, come on, we should have started by now. So, that's what when we think of drummers, your Keith Moons and your Tommy Lees and even John Bonzo. I mean, he was a bit of a family man, but he loved his drinking and he was a loud drummer. But Keith Richards, whenever he talks about a member of the Stones, he talks about Charlie more than Mick. So
100%.
Shows you the level of respect and how much they loved him and obviously now miss him.
Yeah, 100%, bro. I just want to remind folks that we're especially blessed to have Carl join us these 3 weeks, and we're going to finish off, if it's okay with Carl, we're going to finish off the show. We're going to be talking about Mick and Keith. The Glimmer Twins have to get mentioned in this series. Carl is flickering, folks, so it's not your screen where you are. The most important thing is that we can hear Carl, but he is flicking, so don't go and adjust your sets, as they used to say in the old days, Carl. Don't go and adjust your TV sets.
Oh, the rabbit ears on the TV.
Yeah. We're old enough to remember that, and we've got some of our dear friends in the chat joining us live. We've got Sporty back again, and clearly has been joining us for a few weeks now, and joined us a couple of days ago when we did the Sunday show. Strong Rolling Stones fan. We've got Stephen in here from the States, from New York, if I remember rightly.
That's the guy that came at 2 in the morning?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think he's from New York. Another Rolling Stones fan, and our very, very dear friend Jonas Hallberg from Sweden joining us, another Rolling Stones fan. So thank you, guys. And if you're watching on replay, and we do appreciate the fact that people have been watching these streams that Carl and I have been doing midweek. They've been getting some good views, so we appreciate that. And just remember, neither of us are Rolling Stones experts. We're just fans, and we're just here sharing some thoughts and opinions, that we've picked up over the years. So Stephen has corrected me, or well has confirmed. Yes, that is from New York, 1:37 a.m. If I'm right, I did a quick check of the headlines, and you have a new mayor in New York. So that's going to be interesting to see. Always interesting to see how new mayors and new governors go. We've got another dear friend of ours in the chat too, Carl Mission, RG100, another long time. Thank you guys for joining us. So as you guys have already gathered, been up for a week. This is the Charlie Watts Show. This is where Carl and I are going to talk about some stories and thoughts and opinions on Charlie Watts. He already mentioned that Keith had a lot of time for Charlie. And Keith, over the years, Carl, has gone to great lengths to talk about that relationship, not only as brothers that they had, but also as musical partners, Carl.
Yeah. I think so. The key to the Stones sound was Charlie followed Keith. Is that right? Or the other way around? It was one of the two.
Charlie followed Keith.
Yeah, and that sort of gave them their unique sound, and obviously Bill and Charlie worked together. So I've seen some Stones cover bands, but as simple as their songs are, is sometimes only 2 or 3 chords. They're hard to copy because such a tight rhythm section. Keith Richards, I was watching an interview on, I think it was 60 Minutes, Australian interview or something, and he just said, you could put us in a laboratory and mix it all around, but there's only the 3 of us, Charlie, Bill and myself, that makes that sound. So something very special that they had. Obviously, a second guitar player can slot in and the singer can slot in, but that rhythm section, and obviously Keith being a chief riff maker, is crucial to that sound.
Yeah, 100%. How important do you think it was for the Stones developing and moving forward? I like asking this question. You know, we know that Ginger Baker was firmly rooted in jazz. You know, he was trained in jazz. One of the reasons why he was a great timer is because, you know, jazz emphasizes timing and time signatures. And clearly Charlie Watts came from that tradition too, Carl, of being, you know, a traditional jazz drummer at an early age. And in fact, he would go to great lengths to tell people that, you know, that was still his greatest love, jazz music. So how important was that fact, Carl?
I think when you have drummers, obviously it's quite a wide net, a rock drummer. But Charlie being, like a lot of those English drummers with a jazz background, it was almost like a smaller club within a club. And I was watching this Buddy Rich video, and they were interviewing, and they said, so what makes a good drummer? And he said, well, the first thing I can tell of a real drummer is the way that they hold the stick. See, I'm holding it like that?
Yes.
And if I was to play the drums myself, being not a drummer, I would automatically think you're doing this.
Yeah, me too.
But Charlie holds it like that in the tradition of real jazz drummers.
Correct.
And so that's a first example of the respect Charlie had for honoring and honing his craft by acknowledging these great jazz drummers. I've got a few here. So Chico Hamilton is a guy I quite like. And,
oh, wow.
He's an African-American guy with a Latin infusion mix. So he does a lot of that Latin style, which I love. Obviously, he liked the greats, Art Blakey, Elvin Jones, Max Roach, and Buddy Rich. I've forgotten the drummer for Dave Brubeck, but when you mentioned about time changes and you hear that song Take 5, it's that jazz song was a big selling single because it was just so catchy.
Okay.
So I think that the ability of Charlie Watts to have that jazz background, to have a minimalist kit, to have the tradition of holding the stick properly, to be well trained, and to so the jazz background of Charlie, the rockabilly bass style of Bill Wyman, and then the front of the band all blues purists.
Uh-huh.
A beautiful signature sound. And I was listening to some of the early stuff today because I've got a list here of some of the highlights I like of Charlie's drumming. And just right from the jump, the first song on the first album, Route 66, the first thing you hear is Charlie Watts' drumming.
Yes.
And he just sounds so tidy and so skilled and so. I mean, he's skipping along, but there's still some swing, and that's not easy to do.
It's interesting that you should say that because there was no debate or discussion about another drummer having to drum on those early sessions like the Beatles did. Remember how George Martin didn't rate Ringo Starr for a while, and a couple of those singles they had a session drummer. So all credit to Mr. Watts. He was the drummer right from the word go.
Well, they tried out a few drummers. I think one of them went on to play with the Kinks, and I think another one went on to play with another popular British band. But they chased Charlie, I think, for 6 months. They had his eye on him because Brian Jones is no slouch. He had that jazz background, and here's a guy that's already a working musician playing with one of their father figures, Alexis Corner. He's already walking the walk and talking the talk. He's a seasoned musician.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You're right. Bill Wyman talks about that in his biography. That from what he heard, Brian had his eyes. They had their eyes on Charlie from an early point of view. And remember, there was some debate or discussion about whether or not Charlie was going to ditch a regular paying gig to join the Stones, Carl. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. So it was a big risk for Charlie because I think he had the same wife his whole life. He didn't have the baby then, but he was risking a steady paycheck to jump into this sort of, aspiring young fanatical blues rock and roll R&B band, that probably Brian, being as enthusiastic as he is, probably told him a couple of porkies that they had 10 gigs lined up, and then matter of fact they might have only had 2 or 3. But for Charlie to jump ship, he must have said something as well. He must have said, hey, these guys have something special.
Look, I totally agree with you. And the material aspect of a musician's life's really, really important for sure, especially if you're married. That's a good point, Carl. But I totally agree with you. I think that he would have been blown away by the interpersonal dynamics that these guys in this band had. And he clearly had a lot of time for Keith, especially. So, and I think they were a lot of fun to be around. So, if you're a young guy, why wouldn't you do it?
Well, Alexis Corner's probably 10 years older, and it'd be like playing in a cabaret band. And I had a friend that played at the Cosy Club with this, how they do that waltz or two-step, the elderly folk. And he was getting paid, but he was bored out of his mind because it was just the same beat, same songs every Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I know that story, but he had shoe boxes full of money though, didn't he?
That's it, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, Chris Hurley. Yeah.
He had shoe boxes full of $5 bills.
He kept a ledger. He kept a ledger of all his. And it was a drummer, a saxophone player, and the music was boring, but it kept his chops up, and he got paid. And but being around or associating yourself with guys your age with similar energy levels and enthusiasm, and Charlie would have been intrigued with their record collection. He'd be like, "What have I got to lose?"
Yeah. I can go back to these guys anytime.
Well,
I can go back to playing with Alex if this gig doesn't work.
That's a good point. That's a good point. If you're a really good drummer, hot drummer, you're going to be headhunted, not the other way around. Plenty of guitar players around, but not that many good drummers. So, no, that was when we talked about Bill Wyman last week and Charlie. I mean, you talk about two keys that fit the lock. Wow. Another metaphor, the glove that fit the right hand.
Sure.
You just. And what I like about Charlie, it's what he's not doing is what makes him so good. And I like the fact that also to honour his heroes. Not only did he play the drums correctly with the right kit and the right, but he also dressed the part. He was very dapper, very humble. There he is. And very unassuming. So you can't have.
He was cool. He was cool in his own way. Look at him here.
Yeah, He was wearing tailored suits before those guys. Wow, look at his hand.
Long hair.
Yeah.
He's an early shot here of him with his ears showing. But it's interesting that you should talk about his drum kit a little bit early, because I've got some pics here, because I was always, as a Rolling Stones fan and a music fan, growing up, I was always intrigued by his drum kit and Ringo Starr's drum kit, because look at it. Look at that. That's pretty much the drum kit that Charlie used right through his career. Here's another shot of it. And for the drumming experts out there, if you want to know what he used, so he's using one snare, one rack tom, whereas, a lot of drummers would have 2 racks or 3 racks, one floor tom, and one bass drum. That was it.
Unbelievable.
And right up till, the day he died, that was it. One floor, one kick, one tom, and one snare, Carl.
Well, he's just like his kit and just like his attitude. He knows what works and it's reliable. And he's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
No, but I think what's really, really cool about the Rolling Stones, especially, we mentioned this a couple of times over the shows, folks. Carl mentioned that when the Stones were traveling touring the States in 69, they had proper PAs. They weren't, the Rolling Stones previous and the Beatles were just playing through the loudspeaker systems, in these stadiums, like Shea Stadium was just played through a loudspeaker system. But in 69, Charlie was playing this drum that was mic'd properly, Carl, to go through a sound system. So again, impressive. A simple drum sound. A simple drum kit that sounded so incredible.
Absolutely. When you watch that early footage of the mayhem and the energy and the excitement of the screaming fans and the young girls, Keith would have to stand close to Charlie just to try and hear him and try and, and a lot of the recordings, unfortunately, some were captured okay, but the majority are just. I was listening to Live in Australia in 1966, and it's just hardly hear anything. So,
hi Zuni, thank you for joining us. We've got someone else in the chat hanging out with us.
Nice.
You're right. You're right about Keith and Charlie early on being close together, because that's really, really important that Carl mentioned, folks, because they didn't have wedges. They weren't getting, like you do now, the sound being propelled back to you. So it was really important that Charlie could see what Keith was doing to keep the beat.
Yeah. I mean, they're very, very precious about their sound, and Keith's a real stickler in the studio, and they want to pay homage to their idols. So the same would have been for their live stuff. Sure, they got energy, but they still want to sound good. I mean, you don't want to roll up. So they're probably doing everything they could within reason to try and keep it together. So I had a couple of those guys that used to have those record shops, and one of them went to a couple of Stones show in 1964 in New Zealand, and he said they were playing basically that first album start to finish, but it was hard to hear anything, so even he remembers back then. New Zealander Kerry Kostanich was his name. He had the record shop, and exciting but frustrating as well.
Well, yeah, because there were no PAs.
Yeah, Charlie would have been at home in New York or Greenwich Village in a little jazz club with 10 people in the audience. He'd rather be there. That's his style. He's the anti-rock star.
Well, yeah, the anti-rock star, but certainly stuck with the band through its ins and outs, its high points and its low points. One of the greatest employees, that you could ever have in a band. Well, actually, he was part of the band. I shouldn't say employee. He was a solid rock and support for those guys because they had some tough times, Carl.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it wasn't until Alan Klein adjusted their contract that they were working really hard and playing a lot of dates. And I imagine once you divide the promotion fee with the manager and split it with 5, and then the roadie, then the supporting acts wasn't much. I wasn't sure. I mean, it's been a while since I read the books. Do they make more money selling albums or selling singles?
I think the real money for the Stones went through touring. That's
later on.
Later on. So I look from my memory, I don't think there was much of a difference between the money they were earning between a single and an LP, to be fair. If anybody does know what the financial differences are between singles and LPs, let us know. But certainly the big paycheck came, when they were touring, and that gave Charlie an opportunity to buy a lot of things, Arabian horses, Carl.
Yeah, he was. And I just realized the other day, and it doesn't surprise me.
Hi, Brad.
He was very much an avid reader. But I'd like to start just with the initial Stones. I'd like to break it down into 4 segments of his drumming style. So that obviously the first album kicks off with Route 66, but the key part of that Stones, that guitar interweaving, and it's not easy to do, and you can hear it on Honest I Do, and their song Little by Little, which is a Shame, Shame, Shame Jimmy Reed cover, and then 2120 South Michigan Avenue. You can, and Spider and the Fly from the Out of Our Heads album. But he had to learn that Jimmy Reed style, which Andrew Loog Oldham said wasn't easy to do, because it's almost like you've got to be doing heroin to play the beat. You're almost falling off your stool. It's so laid back. So many drummers get it wrong. They play the beat forward, but with African American music, they've got a gift for just laying back just a fraction. Miles Davis mentions it in an interview. A great interview, very clear, not clear as day. He just says that I think he called it lagging the beat or something. But Keith and Brian would have pushed this music onto him, and Charlie played it beautifully. 21 years old and playing this Chicago-style blues that Fred Below and Albert King, I think, played on these Jimmy Reed singles. But these Fred Below and Albert King and these various Chicago drummers were 30s and 40s, you know.
Nobody was doing that in London. There's that latest Charlie biography that came out, and I'll get that information. Sorry, folks, I should have had it here for you, but I've got that book on Kindle and I've been reading it. Nobody in London was playing what Carl was describing. Nobody was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Yardbirds are very influential, but they've been, looking back in time, they come across more as a guitar band. You know, some great axe-wielding musicians in that band, as we know, the Jimmy Pages, the Jeff Becks, but never really known as for their rhythm section, where the Rolling Stones from day one was known as a complete band, all working in cohesion. And a big part of that's Charlie Watts. And
yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about this today, and I was playing in a band in Austin, and he was a friend of mine. He's a great guy, but he was clearly a rock drummer, and we were trying to be a blues band, and it just didn't work because you just hear all this noise in the back. So sometimes the drummer just, what's that saying? They need to be seen, not heard, or heard but not seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at Fred Below and some of those old blues videos, and he's not doing much, and he just does these little clever fills. They've got a split second to do that fill between the next verse, and it's just so clever. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so clearly they were making money through album sales, Carl. Yeah.
And then obviously things started happening. They started touring, and then they did something really quite bold. They did a blues song, released a single, a blues song as a single, Little Red Rooster, and Charlie Watts is all over that. It's almost, I think he's almost doing rim shots where they hit, instead of hitting the snare, they hit the edge. And it just makes, along with Brian Jones's slide guitar, clearly, but just Little Walter said it was one of his favourite bands. They just couldn't believe how these young guys got that sound down. Not easy to do. And another deep cut, like I mentioned, was 2120 South Michigan Avenue.
Yeah.
And Charlie's jazz background became evident in that song, Susie Q. And obviously a big part of that was recording in the Chess Studios, which Charlie, the whole band would have been in love with, because they had, the mixing board was all tube amps, and they were plugging their guitars into the wall, and just the level of sophistication was so different to England.
100%, and that was a big part of the psychological development of the band, I think, because right from the word go, when they were in the States, they were playing those Fender amps, they were playing Gibson Firebirds, Les Paul guitars, Fenders, Framus basses, they were playing good gear, so they had an ear for it. They knew what a good sound was, Carl, and took that forward going forward. Charlie, initially started off using Ludwig's and then went to Gretsch's, good, solid drum sets, Carl.
Yes. And I saw a rare shot yesterday. Gibson had been chasing Brian and Keith for an endorsement. They gave him a couple of Firebirds. There's a rare photo I never saw till yesterday, where Gibson they were trying to endorse a Gibson amplifier, which is an unusual looking amp. It never took off, obviously, but obviously the Firebirds and the Gibson Les Pauls took off. But it was an education that those first two American tours, all of a sudden, the Gretsch's and the F-hole harmonies were gone, and they had proper gear and proper studios, and they were going down to the Apollo Club in New York, and as much as listening to the band, they would have been checking out all the gear as well.
100%.
Yeah, and we talked about this last week. When you looked at James Brown's drummer on the Tammy show, and those beautiful little fills and that really amazing timing.
Hey, Hugh.
That was a stripped down kit too.
Correct.
So, and I've got a lot of respect for a lot of those English drummers. They came from a good school. I like the Zombies, and I like Needles and Pins. Is that the Searchers?
Yeah.
And just really tasty drumming. So they obviously were schooled in the right way with their art schools or high schools, or maybe their clubs they're involved with. But they're all very, very tidy drummers.
So Zuni's saying Phil Seaman, a London jazz drummer in the 50s and 60s, taught Charlie and Ginger too. That's correct. If you look at the Ealing Club documentary, I think they mention that too. So, and Phil clearly, knew what he was doing, to teach these guys, because Ginger Baker and Charlie Watts.
Well, if you think about it, didn't those a lot of those older musicians may have been around with the Second World War, or maybe they've travelled a bit and been to America, and then obviously people didn't know this, but Muddy Waters came to England in the early 60s, and they brought some blues travelling bands. So there was a lot of swapping of information, and especially with the older guys would have been quite seasoned as far as rubbing shoulders and having the right connections. We talked about that last week with the Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. Just slightly the wrong generation. Great musicians, but he just was a bit. By the time the Beatles and the Stones took off, he was deemed a bit older.
Yeah.
Didn't quite make it. So, no, Charlie's real special. Moving on. So obviously Keith and Mick threw at him a little bit of blues and that, but he just mastered the Chuck Berry style stuff. So Down the Road a piece, he just really opens up. Talking About You is a great song, sounds incredible. The Bo Diddley song, I'm Alright. So very, very adaptable, Charlie, with the style. Very, very. You give him anything, and he'll do it.
He'll even have a go at doing reggae.
Yeah, we saw that on, and we'll talk about that later in Black and Blue.
Sure.
Yeah, like the beauty of the Rolling Stones is, we talked about this before, they were slightly ahead of a lot of other bands in the sense that they were eager to try new things, because they had to. If you wanted to be a successful band, you had, especially Mick Jagger, he would be checking out all the clubs, as we know later on, and he'd be saying, Keith, what do you think about this disco? And Keith would be like, I don't know. But Charlie adapted that beautiful Miss You and Emotional Rescue, and anything that was happening, the Stones could do.
Sure.
So, and obviously, as the Stones started to take off, and I prefer this drumming to the Satisfaction drumming, Get Off My Cloud.
Sure.
Amazing. So it's like a little machine gun he's got going on there. Instantly recognisable drum pattern. And Ringo Starr, he had his own style too, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Ringo loved using that ride cymbal a lot too, didn't he? He was using that a lot, and he wouldn't hit the ride cymbal. He'd kind of sort of like I wish I had a drumstick here.
Yeah.
But you can check. I'll show you. See if this will work. I ain't no drummer, folks, but instead of hitting like that which is what a lot of drummers will do. Ringo would sort of flick it.
Timing.
Correct.
Yeah, I like that sound. Yeah, because I was thinking about this today, and I used to think, oh, in order to do anything, you got to be strong, like golf.
No.
And
Yeah.
let's say, for example, even tackling with rugby, timing supersedes strength
Correct.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So you look at a golf player. Obviously, Greg Norman's a bit different, but Nick Faldo and Tiger Woods, and the same with drumming. It's more the timing than anything. And even tackling with rugby, if you've got a bit of confidence and you're very athletic, all you're doing is letting their force, just topple over you as opposed to a big shoulder charge. So that's what I love about that's why I like Charlie. Charlie's a tidy drummer because he's just doing, and Ringo, they're just like timekeepers. And when it comes time to do a nice fill or be a bit louder, they do it, but they do it tastefully. It's not all like Keith Moon's another kind of animal, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
But the Who's another kind of band altogether.
Yeah, 100%. We were doing a show a couple of weeks ago, and Simon was on, and he reminded me of this interview that I read and we saw years ago, where all the drummers we were talking about knew how to tune their drums. They would tune their drums properly and correctly. Take the time to tune it. Keith Moon didn't know how to tune. Everything was just tuned tight. So his tuning was the amount of pressure he would hit on the skins. That was what he thought tuning was.
Because on the snare, isn't there a clamp you can turn on and turn off?
Yeah.
And I like a crisp snare, but I also quite like more of a Latin sort of a damp sound as well. So drummers who are very particular about their sound, you always see them sort of fiddling around with their gear, and I like that because it means that they're real precious about their sound, and that's something you got to admire.
Sure.
So yeah, clearly understated, but obviously that middle period when stuff started to take off, Get Off My Cloud, Under My Thumb. Unbelievable. Paint It Black. Unbelievable. The drumming almost, as long as with the sitar, just makes the song. And that's the #1 most streamed Rolling Stones song, which
you were saying. Yeah.
But the drumming, that turned America on its head, turned the whole world on its head, really. Just a different sound. It was blues, it wasn't rock, it was almost socially charged, a little bit of Eastern influence.
Yeah.
So just Charlie's so clever. And here's some deep cuts that I was listening to today. Flight 505 on the Aftermath.
Yeah.
Really good drumming.
You're digging deep now.
Miss Amanda Jones from Between the Buttons.
Yeah.
And he's not too big on the bass drum, but the kick drum, but 2000 Light Years from Home is a good example of him doing a heavy kick sound.
The kick becomes the main sound for Charlie on Exile, in my opinion. That's when the kick comes in for Charlie.
Yep.
But you're right though, Carl. There's a few years between what you've just said and Exile. So, but yeah. It's almost as if the kick didn't exist for a long time. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, because his signature sound was very quick fills on the snare.
Sure.
Every now and then, some beautiful rim shots, nice cymbal work, very lean kit, and just tidy all around. But not much he definitely didn't play a double kick as we hear with the heavy
No.
metal band. He didn't
No.
need to.
No.
But and Keith Richards wasn't his famous quote. There was a bit too much lead in John's foot. With we both know that quote. Great drumming on Jigsaw Puzzle Blues, Beggars Banquet.
Oh my Lord.
Stray Cat Blues.
Oh my gosh.
And then obviously moving on to Let It Bleed. Standout tracks for me is obviously Give Me Shelter, Live With Me, Monkey Man, and obviously one of his most famous, if not the most famous drumming track is Honky Tonk Woman.
Yeah.
With the cowbell.
Yeah. Wow. That intro. That intro from that recording, Carl, that you're talking about, and then the version on this album that I got behind me, Get Your Ya-Ya's Out.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
It's perfect.
Yes, because a lot of people don't know this, and I almost had to second guess myself today because I was listening to You Can't Always Get What You Want. But that's Jimmy Miller on drums, eh?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think Charlie was either absent from the session or he couldn't quite get the sound they're looking for, which is quite rare. And Charlie, being as humble as he is, and we saw that with It's Only Rock and Roll with Kenny Jones on drums, he just said, okay, whatever. So
that's what I understand the story to be. If anybody else, has a different opinion on that, please share that in the comments. But Charlie wasn't ever going to get into an argument about anybody, just like Bill never got into an argument when Keith wanted to play bass. It's okay.
Well, it's just, we see it with so many bands. Look at the Beatles. All of a sudden, Paul's playing lead guitar. He's on piano. Ringo Starr is singing a song. Before I lose my thought, so Ringo Starr and George Harrison had a bit of a country and western rockabilly connection. Is that right?
Correct.
Band?
Yeah.
That was an important part of their sound. Was that
correct?
Connection.
Yeah. So John and Paul were the rock and rollers.
Yes.
But Ringo and George, they knew the rockabilly.
Yes.
And there's a difference.
Yeah, and it's great to have a band with different tastes because it infuses something great down the line once you look at the Rolling Stones and their 60-year journey of different musical tastes. So that first part we talked about was that R&B, rock and roll, blues sound that from England, and Charlie obviously just playing like a lot of other drummers, just a dance-friendly beat. Then obviously that second period with the Rubber Soul and Satanic Majesties and Aftermath and Revolver. All of a sudden we're hearing an Eastern sound, and French Baroque sound and a Moroccan sound. So but by the time Beggars Banquet, Let It Bleed came around, and we'll see this in Sticky Fingers, Charlie Watts just had that really good rock sound down. He really came into his own, especially on Sticky Fingers.
100%.
Yeah, so it was almost like a new era with a 25, 26, 27 years old, established, selling out stadiums, and tastefully still playing well, but really stamped as a bona fide rock and roll drummer. Sticky Fingers, standout tracks: Brown Sugar, Sway, one of Andrew Walton's favourites, Can't You Hear Me Knocking?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And one of our friends, Richard Fox's favourite, the song that bled $2 million from his personal savings, BITCH. The song that his friend played him in a 1988 Toyota Corolla, and his world was never the same. But the drumming on Itch is incredible as well. So, yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I think we need to talk about Jimmy Miller's influence on the development of the Rolling Stones moving forward to this period, Carl, that you've just described, when they were a little bit older. Beggars Banquet, the tonal, I don't have that book here. Forgive me for being sloppy with my research. I should have been more onto it. But it's interesting when you look at that album, they understood very clearly what they were doing. All the songs on that album are in a key, and the key of B, C. So it goes up and it comes down. So you're not just listening to songs on this album. You're listening to a tonal palette that's deliberately being given to you by the production team. And in the minds of the Rolling Stones when they were recording that, Keith sort of spoke about it being like the supernatural blues, that was coming through. But they needed Jimmy Miller to sort of present them on how you do this on an album, on that landscape. And and why could Jimmy do that so well, Carl? Why did Jimmy do it so well? Because he was a drummer himself.
Good point. He was an Englishman, not an American? Or was he American?
He's American.
American guy, yes. So the Stones produced Satanic Majesties themselves, and how, as out of it as they were, it's not an actually bad sounding album, but they knew in order for them to get back to their roots, they needed a hand with a bona fide.
Correct.
So Jimmy Miller experience with Traffic.
Correct.
Yes, and a few other bands. So, and that's the great thing about the Stones is they, as big as egos as they had, and Jagger Richards having those alpha personalities, they did realize that when they needed to bring the big guns in, they did that, because that's just surviving. Really, that's your Jimmy Millers, your Graham Parsons, your Ry Cooters, your the guy that played fiddle on Factory Girl, the black guy that did the congas on Sympathy for the Devil, Mary Clayton on Gimme Shelter.
Yeah,
they had to get the best vocalist in town, gospel sound. So, but you're right. Jimmy Miller changed their sound, so he was a big part of their sound. From they let him go on Goat's Head Soup, or was it It's Only Rock and Roll?
I think Goat's Head Soup is when the Glimmer Twins produced that. Yeah. So I think It's Only Rock and Roll was the last one that he did. Is that correct? I think so. Yeah.
There was a bit of a not a falling out, but they, with all the drugs, and it's a bit like a really good boxer in the early days. They did 10 fights a year, but when the money started piling in and the records sold, the activity got less frequent. So Goat's Head Soup was a bit of a disaster because there was so much time in between songs and people weren't showing up, and it had run its natural course, which was unfortunate.
Hey, Joker Fish.
But Jimmy Miller was integral, like you said, with that sound, capturing that big rock sound.
Yeah, and I think in reflection, when Charlie went and listened on playback to those songs on Beggars Banquet, you compare, you just pointed out some great drumming tracks that he did during that middle period that the Stones had, but that's no comparison to the drum sound that, he was getting on Beggars Banquet and Let It Bleed. He would have been blown away by what he was hearing, Carl. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I have a very, very early pressing of Let It Bleed, English pressing, and the song Live With Me. You can hear the air around the bass drum and the snare.
Wow.
So, and I've been doing some research, and I want to get all my gear properly set up in January. Like we talked about, a webcam and a microphone. but miking the drums is a
Correct.
big part of the sound. So I've been researching microphones to try and make a little studio to get, because obviously right now this ain't working, what my setup. But you're right, Jimmy Miller, having a musical background, a drumming background, a bit like Al Cooper. Al Cooper was a great musician and a great producer. Here's a fun fact. Rick Rubin was the big guy. He did Johnny Cash, he did Chili Peppers, he did Slayer, he did Beastie Boys, he did such a wide range of musical styles, but he wasn't a trained musician at all. He just said in interviews, I just know what sounds good.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Yes.
Because how many bands and albums we've seen in the 80s that were overproduced, the drumming sound was all wrong, and the recordings are unfortunately eternally doomed.
Oh, let's be fair though. Let's be fair to Rick. He was a very, very, very smart man, fast learner. You know, he was only ever needed to be explained something once. He picked up the technical side of the things really, really quickly. I've read a lot of articles and interviews over the years about him where people say, you know, he memorized the difference between the 15 different microphones in one setting, Carl. He knew what the mic, you know, he knew the number of the mic, and he knew what that mic could do.
Risk taker. He tried new things
immediately, whereas other people, you know, normally were learning this stuff when they were part of the engineering side of you know, the business before they got into the production, you know, to know, because I wouldn't know the difference of 15 microphones, Carl, and what they do.
Well, yeah, I mean, it amazes all of us. They got it right in the 70s. I think the 70s was the best sounding of all music, where stereo was recorded properly, the mixing desks weren't digital, the bands were hot. Case in point would be Yes and Deep Purple and all that prog rock, and Elton John and Queen, and just incredible sound. But Rick Rubin was humble, and he was eager to try new things, and it panned out well. But getting back to Jimmy Miller, he may have been the same. He may have been like, you know what? Let's just keep that drum track. It's a hot track for
correct.
Can't always get what you want. And the proof's in the pudding. To this day, it sounds as good as today as it did back in '69.
100%. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, and we can't underestimate the ability that these producers had to get into the minds and also support the individuals and also the act and the bands that they were working with. There's a wonderful 3-part series on Disney where Rubin has he interviews Paul McCartney, and they talk about the development of the Beatles song. Sorry to sort of digress, but it's related to what we're talking about, folks. And Rick Rubin is there, and just the way that he's talking and the way that he's just relating to Paul McCartney, and also some of that early stuff that he did with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's just incredible. Just a great communicator, Carl. So, you know, I think that's half of what these producers have to do. And you know, getting that out of your artists is really important.
I mean, you being in the building industry, how many builders have you seen walk into your shop and they're really good at what they do, but they're nothing without an architecture? The architect 100%. Is in the office. He's the draftsman. He's drawing up the plans. He's got it up here, and the builder has
Correct.
it here.
Yep.
And it's like a producer, because it can be overwhelming if you're a musician. You're just focused on your guitar solo, what key the song should be on. The last thing you want to be doing is going back and forth to the mixing board. You want someone else in the booth, you know, saying, "Hey guys, that's take 5, and that's all you need. That's the take." So Jimmy Miller, what an asset. And while I remember on Exile on Main Street, there was a few drumming a few drummers that, besides Charlie, that played on that album, wasn't there?
Can you remind me?
Well, it's a double album, and obviously when you take out the inserts, it has all the guys playing on each song. And I think there's a guy called Bill Plummer that plays bass. I think Jimmy Miller plays drums on one song.
Yes.
So there was a lot of musicians going back and forth on Exile. So with Sticky Fingers, it was pretty much a Charlie Watts album, incredible drumming, but Exile was quite loose.
Sure.
Very, very loose. So yeah. No, that's you brought up a good point. Hey, Charlie, your drumming sounds incredible, but how about we just how about we mic it a bit different and we get a different sound? And you know what? That's all it took.
Yeah.
Well, it was same with Sympathy for the Devil. That's why it's such a good DVD. Is Sympathy for the Devil? The song started out as a folk song and then finally ended up as a samba.
Yeah.
It shows you how the inner workings of the Rolling Stones. All it took was to change the tempo or the shuffle.
Yeah.
And the song took on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, I'm blown away. So Sticky Fingers, and obviously one of your favorite albums, Exile. The only song that I can remember on that particular album that sounds incredible as far as drumming. They all sound really good, but it's such a hodgepodge, so many different styles. Tumbling Dice.
Yeah. And
it's all about the groove, isn't it?
Yeah. Rocks Off, the opening track, is incredible.
Yes.
Where Charlie is just off the beat when he kicks that kick drum in. It's just again, it's a mission statement, that opening track. Just incredible. Love it.
Yes. And I think Tumbling Dice is probably one of the finest examples of how Keith and Charlie worked together.
Sure.
Just 72, 62. So here's 10 years of playing together, playing a lot. And the more they played, the less they played, because the sound is so good, is because it's what they're not doing.
Sure.
It's all about the groove. And then obviously we had nothing really stood out for me on Goat's Head Soup or It's Only Rock and Roll, but Black and Blue.
Wow.
He got to use the brushes on melody, which he would have been quite happy with.
Yeah.
So jazz inspired, Billy Preston inspired song. So yes, and then obviously moving on, we get into that sort of that last great Stones period for me, which is Some Girls Up to Tattoo You, a little bit of Undercover of the Night, but once again, Charlie unmistakable. So Mick Jagger's crawling around all the nightclubs. Disco 54 is the big club in New York City. Punk rock's in vogue. Disco's in vogue. The reporters are saying, "Hey, Stones, aren't you guys getting a bit old now?" Compared to us, they're really young. And the Stones give us "Miss You."
Yeah.
Number one song, and huge. I think their biggest selling album, and it's got punk style drumming and disco style drumming all the way through it. So whatever the world's doing, the Stones will throw it back, and the world tends to follow.
Yeah. Don't forget the drumming on that track, Emotional Rescue.
Yes.
Just another standout. But look, sorry for jumping ahead, but look, that's Some Girls album. Again, very much an album that doesn't get discussed, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, two standout tracks apart from Miss You that on that album that are hard to play: Beast of Burden and Shattered. Shattered only has a 3 or 4 chords, but the drumming, if the drumming's not on, the whole song's ruined, because I've seen them play it live and they can't quite get that same sound as they did in the studio.
No.
Because there's a lot of build up with the drumming and the guitar, but that's what makes Some Girls such a good album, because there's a lot of attitude in that album.
Yes, Brad. The Stones threw stones back at the critics.
I was going to send you a text picture of the poster. There's 2 of them for sale on eBay, and it's Mick Jagger, and it's about the time they had that '67 court bust. He who's without stone cast the first sin. Have you seen that quote?
Yeah.
He is without stone cast the first, something like that. But yeah, so that sums up Some Girls, and then you mentioned Emotional Rescue.
Yeah.
And along with Bill Wyman's great bass playing. This goes in vogue. There's a lot of black bands. There's the Earth, Wind and Fire. There's Donna Summers. There's a lot of White Powder. New York's the place to be.
Yep.
But Stones was ahead of the groove, really, as far as ahead of the scene. And then closing out with, I think, their last great album, Unrecognizable, a beautiful drum beat, Start Me Up. Once again, it's that Keith Richards, Charlie Watts connection, and then Bill Wyman slots in a little bit later. And they're not doing a whole lot, but what they're doing makes it everything.
Yeah, little TNA, Waiting on a Friend,
Yes.
Just some good solid stuff on that album. And again, I want to remind folks, Carl and I have spoken about this a lot when we've discussed this album over the years, but it's worth reminding people, because the casual Stones fan won't know this or doesn't know this, but 90% of those tracks go back to 1972. They're old tracks. Yeah.
Yes. The standout songs from me on Tattoo, we talked about Start Me Up. A couple of deep cuts here: Slave and Heaven.
Yeah.
And Andrew mentioned, which is one of my favourite Stones songs of all time, and it's probably one of their best deep cuts, along with Time Waits for No One, is Waiting on a Friend.
Yeah.
But there was a guy called Chris Kimsey, I think, or someone said, "Hey guys, you did that '78 American tour, and the record company's really pushing for another album and another tour." And they go, "Oh, we got nothing in the can." And he says,
"Yeah,
I've actually just been digging through the vaults, and you got about 30 songs, which I think sound great." They're like, "What, really?" So Start Me Up was started as a reggae song.
Yeah.
And then they just sort of changed the tuning or the key or the rhythm pattern, and all of a sudden they've got a banger, a worldwide rock anthem.
Well, Keith gave that the 5-string open G treatment. So originally it was, played in standard guitar, and so all he did was just play the same chords with this open G, and that was the sauce, baby. That's the juice. That's what gave, yeah.
That's what you call a statement intro. It's so strong and so recognisable and so Stonesy and so signature to their sound. It was such a great song that Steve Ballmer, when they were releasing Microsoft 98 to the world in 1998, as part of their launch, that was the song that he came on stage. You remember? Did you see that when he was jumping up and down?
Yeah.
Here's all these Silicon Valley nerds jumping up and down to Start Me Up, launching their Microsoft Windows 98. But once again, like Andrew said, I mean, I think Slave and Heaven go back to 70 outtakes from Exile. There was some outtakes from Goat's Head and Black and Blue, and there's almost every song on there is great. I mean, all killer, no filler on Tattoo You.
Yeah.
It just shows the depth of the Stones. I mean, I can't even write one song, and they've got 20 leftovers that give us a great album. Yeah, and we talked about this last week. A great, the live at Hamptons is great in '81, and we get to see Charlie, and you mentioned them coming out with Under My Thumb, but the live at Leeds is really good too, and surprisingly sounds great being played outdoors, where generally the indoor concerts sound better, but they obviously have the right guys on the mixing board and the soundboards outdoors.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But Charlie's in heaven playing that song, Let Me Go. It's just incredible. And there's Ian Stewart and Chuck Leavell playing on the same piano, and just the rhythm and the timing is just, for me, that was their last great period, was about 82.
Yeah.
And their last song for me, and I remember this as a kid, it had a great video, and once again the drumming was centre stage, was Under Cover of the Night.
Yes. That's incredible. You go and listen to the drumming on that. It's phenomenal.
Yes, and you know, Miami Vice, I think, was coming on as a TV series, and there was a lot of, you know, American TVs and sitcoms were huge, and once again, Under Cover of the Night just fitted perfectly into that musical landscape of 1983. You know, drug references and Nicaragua and communism and coups.
Yep.
So just clever guys, well-read musicians, and just ahead of the beat as far as what's going on in the world. So
no,
yeah,
I've enjoyed this conversation about Charlie, and I suppose we have to remind people that, you know, we've got some Rolling Stones shows on this channel, folks, if you guys want to go and have a look, and I'll attach some links to the shows that Carl and I have just done recently: the Mick Taylor show, the Bill Wyman show, the Brian Jones show as well. And a couple of years ago, when Charlie passed away, we were lucky enough to have an open show here where we had about 4 or 5 people, including our friend Richard Fox, where we were doing a bit of a tribute to Charlie. But it was just nice to hear what the Rolling Stones, what Keith and Mick had to say about Charlie, wasn't it, Carl? You know, when he passed away, it was just incredible.
Yeah, well, they'd lost not only a bandmate, but more importantly, they'd lost a friend. It's kind of an eerie feeling. It's like I'm just going to use an example, like a pet. You've had a dog, a loyal dog for 15 years, and come up your driveway, and the dog comes running out, and one day he doesn't do that because he's, you know, unfortunately moved on. And Keith described that a little bit with looking back at the drummer, and Charlie wasn't there.
Yes.
And just, you know, a sad feeling. But in the other part, a feeling of joy knowing that they made some incredible music for 55 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we're obviously up to 60 now, close to it, but Charlie passed away, what, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah.
So, yeah, like you mentioned before, just really great employees. They had, just like the Beatles, the Who. That's why Led Zeppelin basically said, you know what, we're not going to go on. We're not going to replace John. That's how important he is to our sound and to our friendship. And that's a sort of similar respect they had for Charlie Watts. I mean, obviously they replaced him, but, you know, in the marketing, it's just the three of them now.
Yeah, and that's okay, and that's entirely up to you as a band to make that decision, you know. And I'm glad that they decided to continue and carry on, and you know, that band is going to continue until one of the Glimmer Twins passes away. So, and that just gets us on to the next show that we're going to do here. So, you know, we've got 2 more shows that we're going to do this year, folks, Carl and I, on this Rolling Stones segment here on the channel. We'll do Mick Jagger next week and talk about his career and some of the high points, you know, that we think, you know, that he has achieved for us as fans, and you know, the legacy that he's left. And you know, boy, what a legacy that is, Carl. Jeepers.
Mick Jagger?
Mick Jagger, yeah.
Yeah, well, just, I mean, let's face it, he had a really great solo career. I mean, I don't know the albums, but he's, you know, the Tina Turner, the David Bowie, he did a blues album with, I think, the Blue Devils or the Red Devils.
Yeah, She's the Boss, that solo album that he did, that was huge. And what, 86?
Jeff Beck was on that, wasn't he? He did a few songs.
Yeah.
So he was sounding good, and there was a few clips that we saw on that great. They've never released it on DVD, but it's on VHS 25x5, and he's got a real hipster band, but it sounds great, and it's just Mick Jagger. He's just really, he's just a real professional musician. We know that he's just so good.
And he looks good. He looks good, you know. So we got to give him that. But
Peter Pan, isn't he? He's just refuses to get old.
Yeah, and well, that's right, Carl. And you know, I think, you know, the fact that those 2 guys have decided to keep that band going. And again, I want to remind folks too, if you're not aware, most of you would already know this because you're all Stones fans, but you know, the Rolling Stones are currently in the studio right now recording another album. There's been no set date for release. I haven't heard anything about it, but if anybody does, leave a comment here on the channel somewhere on some of these videos, because I get all the comments. That we get a notification for all the comments, but it'll be interesting to see what they come out with, Carl. And this will be the first live album they've done without Charlie.
That's right. Yeah.
Sorry, the first recorded album.
Yes. I mean, obviously with Keith, we'll talk about the Expensive Winos and Waddy Wachtel and musicians he loves to use, but. I'd like to close out the show, if you don't mind.
Yes, please do. Please.
With Charlie's, obviously, he's a great dresser. He's very humble. He's a great drummer, as we've talked about, but an incredible dry sense of humour.
Have you got some? I'm sure you've got some stories there of his sense of humour that you can tell us before we end the show?
Oh, well, obviously there's a lot of great clips from '64, and you get to see snippets in that great documentary, Charlie's My Darling. And but obviously the most famous, and Keith Richards talks about all the time, is they're on tour and Mick Jagger was drunk, and he said, "Where's my drummer?" And Charlie Watts, cool as a cucumber, gets up, has a shave, puts on his suit, comes downstairs, and Keith Richards described it as one of the best punches he ever seen. He says, I'm not your drummer, you're my singer," or something.
Yeah.
And just a great 5 minutes of comedy there. So a handy right hand in addition to his drumming skills. Don't underestimate the quiet ones.
Hugh, our brother, has just put an interesting comment in the chat that this album they're working on will be their 25th studio album. And remember when we had Richard Fox on, and Richard Fox had this theory that Mick Jagger especially was driven by records. he's a very driven man. He wanted the band, to get to 60, and he wants to be, he wants to be still playing when he's 80 or 85. So there would have been a determined effort for this band to come out with their 25th studio album. Very, very interesting point.
Well,
thanks, Brad.
Like we talked about before, see you, Brad. The reporters and I mean, there's a terrible interview of who's the guy that got fired from NBC? I've forgotten his name. It'll come to me. But anyway, he interviewed Charlie Watts, and it was the most just terrible questions. And Charlie handled it just like a gentleman. He was just very polite. You're late 90s or something, but just shows you how classy Charlie Watts is. That he's quite at home with, like you mentioned, with his horses, with his wife, with his books,
yes.
with his records, with his
going
kids. Kids, his daughter, going up to Carnaby Street and checking out the threads and the Burberry clothing. Catching maybe a late matinee or a cricket match, and he was an old man before he was an old man. So,
yeah, and he, unfortunately too, he developed a heroin addiction in the 70s.
85.
80, sorry, yes, yeah.
The Dirty Work album, yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
the reporter was Matt Laurie. Remember Matt Laurie?
Correct.
Yeah, terrible interview. It shows you the classiness of Charlie Watts. But that surprised us all, because we all know about Keith's deep, dark relationship with heroin, especially all through the 70s. In addition to obviously the cocaine, and then obviously the chain smoking and the Jack Daniels. But heroin needles is, I've never put a needle in my arm. I don't want to. Needles frighten most people, but it was surprising to all of us that Charlie Watts, this sort of very conservative, very English, very safe, quiet, respectable guy. But I think his reasoning was that everyone else had tried it, and he felt like he'd been left behind and wanted to try it.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories. He's gone on record to say, and you got to take a little bit of what they say with a grain of salt too. That there was boredom involved as well. So. But yeah, look, we can only speculate. Everybody else that came into contact with Keith Richards wanted to keep up with Keith Richards, and he's on record saying that a few times. We mentioned that a couple of times last week when we were doing the show. That people would be carried out after spending a couple of hours partying with Keith Richards. So maybe he thought, well, if all these other people couldn't handle it, maybe I could. Who knows?
When I think of hard doers, I think of the Keith Richards, Lemmy from Motorhead, Ozzy Osbourne, Tom Waits, guys that are hard living, hard men, possibly
Clapton for 2 years.
Yes. But Charlie, what a surprise, and I'm glad he snapped out of it, because it surprised everybody,
Well, his wife.
Yes.
His wife gave him the ultimatum.
Wow. And so Charlie, a very loyal guy, married to the same wife his whole life, had the one daughter.
Correct.
Just a perfect guy to have in your band.
Yeah, and spoke early on in '65. They were interviewing him, and he's even then, back then, he's saying, how he looks forward to going home. When that tour is over from Ireland, he's going, looking forward to going home.
He reminds me of someone that's like an accountant, or maybe someone that works at the council, or white collar and very, arrives at work, socks pulled up, 8 o'clock every day, leaves at 5, sharpens his pencil.
Yeah.
Predictable clothing, just extreme. And that's what you want in a drummer. Someone like that, reliable, timekeeper. You don't want someone that's destructive or unpredictable.
Yeah.
Too bad if he was conservative, quite predictable. That's all you need in a drummer.
Yeah, Jakey Fish, drugs are very bad for you, of course, 100%.
Oh yeah. I'm all about clean living these days.
100%, and yeah, me too. Carl and I are. I'm coming up 16 years sober.
Congratulations. Me
Carl?
almost 3 years.
3 years. Yeah, I was going to say 4. So yeah, congratulations, bro. Congratulations.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just like. Who's that great actor? Josh. He was in No Country for Old Men. Josh Brolin, is it? Groban?
Josh Brolin.
Brolin, that's right. He said, "I'd be a liar to say I don't miss it." When I say I don't miss it, I mean the social interaction with my friends, but it's only always the first hour or two, because after that everything's noise and problems. So in all reality, after that first hour or two, I don't miss it at all. It's only the first hour, and it's worth it, So anybody out there struggling, and like Andrew said, and I have to agree, it was easy to give up.
Oh, you just had, like a lot of things, you have to be in the right mind. Have to, it's a state of mind.
And I do lack confidence in social environments, but I'm working on that, and but it's well worth it, to be honest, because my body is thanking me, and my mind and my soul.
Yep. Thank you, Sporty. Bravo for sobriety, and Jakey Fish, get high on music instead. Absolutely. And one of the reasons why we enjoy doing things on this channel, Jakey Fish, is we do a weekly ranking the track show here on a Sunday. And Carl and I are going to be doing some midweek stuff, and it's good because this is like a gig, because you prepare for it. We don't jump on here and spend an hour and a half without, having a bit of an idea of what we're going to talk about and how we're going to talk about it and stuff like that. And nobody turns up for a gig unprepared.
Yeah.
And as I say, again, neither of us are experts. Nobody on this channel is an expert. This is a fan-based channel. We're just fans getting together, talking about music. And if you ever want to join us on one of these shows and hang out with us, flick us a message, because we've had lots of guests on here. If you want to get together and talk about a music album, or a band, it's what we do. And Carl, I want to appreciate you again, brother, for giving us a wonderful insight and your thoughts about Charlie. Rest in peace, Charlie. Thank you for the music. And next week, Carl and I are going to spend an hour and a half talking about one of the greatest frontmen ever. And the last show in this series will be, obviously, Mr. Richards, Keith Richards. Love him. I love him. I love Keith. I'll take Keith, warts and all.
Yeah. I like one of his quotes. It's from that book. Victor Bockris wrote it. I should buy that book, Keith's autobiography. And he says, "I regret nothing."
No.
And what a great name for a solo album. Talk is cheap. Just. And he's
I love Keith, and if you read his biography now, the only thing that Keith does, his only vice now is lollies, sweets, candy.
Oh, is that right?
That's it. Yeah.
Oh wow! What happened to your Keith Richards skull bracelet?
Oh, I still got it here somewhere.
Do you have a skull ring?
The handcuff.
Yeah.
I'll wear it for the show for you.
Yeah. Keith. There's a great quote. I mean, obviously we'll talk about Keith in a couple of weeks, and I think I was talking to my dad about it. My dad's very sick right now, so if anybody's a prayer warrior out there, please pray.
Sorry to hear.
Yeah, no, very, very, very sick. But Keith said something about 2 doctors were very worried about him. They gave him 6 months to live. And 10 years later, a reporter said, so how'd you get on with those doctors? He said, oh, yeah, I went to both of their funerals. Keith outlasted everybody.
Well, yeah, he fell out of a coconut tree in Fiji and it was flown to New Zealand, and a surgeon up in Auckland saved his life. Yeah,
he's got a lot of time for Auckland. Yes. And Mick Jagger was in Keri and was incognito in a bar, and he told the waitress that he wanted nobody to talk to him, and he was sipping mineral water and just very incognito.
Yeah,
amazing lives these guys have had, but Charlie Watt's a big part of that, and thanks for this, Andrew, because it sort of reignited some of these songs I was listening to today, and just how special and how great he really is.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's always great catching up with you, brother, and sharing an hour and a half talking about great music. And I do look forward next week. So if you're watching on a replay, please make sure you hit that notification button and come and join us as we celebrate the Rolling Stones on this part of the YouTube world. If you've got some thoughts and comments about what we've said, if you disagree with any of our opinions, that's fine. And if you've got some tidbits to share or something that you think we need to check out, again, please leave a comment here, because I promise we'll get back to them. Are we out of here, brother?
Yes. Sorry about some of the technical issues, but I am going out of my way January to paint a couple of walls in my second room in my house.
Yeah.
I'm going to be investing in a proper microphone.
Good.
But like you, I want to get some good gear, because this can't be happening. I'm calling from Mars right now. I'm flickering, So at least
it's all good.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for everyone tuning in, and long may the Stones roll on.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to do a shout out to the folks in the chat before we go. Joker Fish, thank you for the nice comment. Super fun. Yeah, exactly. That's what we want to do. Hugh, our dear brother in Scotland, thank you. Sporty, thank you for, again, being the 4th week in a row, hanging out with us. Zuni XL5, please hit the notification button, Zuni. When you subscribe to our channel, Zuni, I'll make a subscription back. So we do subscribe to everybody that's back. And we ask you, please, if you go and have a look at our channels page, we've got some friends on our community page that we ask you to go and subscribe to their channel. Hugh Caldwell in particular, if you go and check out Hugh's channel, he's a very good friend of ours. He's dropping music videos on a regular basis there. Who else was in the chat with us? Our dear friend from Australia, Brad, will be back with the Rock Professor and him on Sunday, ranking the Outlaws album. We look forward to that. I think we've got everybody. We had Mission RD100 at the top of the show. I think we've got everybody. So, yeah, we'll leave you. Today is Guy Fawkes here in New Zealand, so our neighbours are going to be lighting off crackers and fireworks, so we'll be listening and watching a bit of that for the next couple of hours. Thank you very much.
See you guys. Thanks so much. Thanks, Andrew.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
See you.